Okay, as in go? Sorry, 1 second.
Forktales, a podcast that feeds the food and beverage world.
Oh, awesome. Forktales is brought to you by Vigor, a branding and marketing agency for passion-driven, innovative restaurant, beverage, and hospitality brands. Learn more at vigorbranding.com. If you love what we're serving up, please give Forktales a 5-star review on your podcast service of choice. Think of it as a tip for good service. Hey everyone, today I am joined by Zack Oates. He is the founder and CEO of Ovation, and he might be a master seamstress if you're looking at what I'm looking. I see a sewing machine and a serger, which I bet you didn't know I knew what that was.
Wow,
Yeah.
I'm already impressed.
Yeah, that's what happens when you have a wife who's a costume designer. But anyway, Zack, say hello, give a little bit of backstory.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me address the elephant sewing machine in the room, I guess I should say. So my wife is a fashion designer. She is like unreal good at designing clothes, from like, little costumes to her wedding dress, right? And anyway, so she lets me borrow her office in this whole work from home environment. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, so my name is Zack Oates, like you said, and the story of really why I'm here and what I'm doing at Ovation is that Ovation is an actionable guest feedback platform. We work exclusively with restaurants. We were just named the #1 restaurant guest feedback platform in America, which we're super proud of because
Woohoo.
as you know, Joseph, being in the industry, there's a lot of things that a lot of awards you can buy. This was not one of them. This was an independent study put out by restaurantowner.com. So we were super grateful for that. And my background is I grew up in the restaurant industry, right? I learned that the most important thing in the restaurant industry, everything that we do, from the decor to the menu items to the training to hiring the right staff, everything boils down to one thing: the guest experience. And yet current tools just suck, right? I mean, think about it. We make it so hard for people to give us feedback in the hospitality industry. We're expecting them to go and take a receipt survey. Okay, I want someone to email me a picture if they have taken a receipt survey in the last month. Okay, because that is like, I would be blown away. I've asked this question to numerous audiences before, and out of like the thousands of people I've asked, I've had like 3 people raise their hand of who's taken a receipt survey in the last month. It just doesn't happen. But then what else their other options are: they can go online and leave you a 1-star review, and every 1-star review is going to leave you 30 customers, or they can go and complain to your staff, which is going to take 10 to 15 minutes to resolve. And so, but most people, you know what they do, Joseph? They just
Nothing.
won't come back. Yep.
Right.
They don't do anything. They don't come back. And so you never hear about it. So anyway, I growing up in restaurants and then getting into technology, this is my 3rd startup. I kind of combined the technology and the restaurants together, brought together a team, and really reimagined what would guest feedback look like if it were invented today. So after working with restaurants around the country and doing interviews with the actual guests of the restaurants, we created Ovation, and it's an omni-channel 2-question survey that allows restaurants to easily resolve guest concerns in real time, get more 5-star reviews from your happiest customers, and then aggregate all of the data to discover insights to improve what's going well, what isn't going well. And that's really where we focus is a frictionless experience for the guest, easy for management to respond, powerful for you to like actually do something with that data, because those were the 3 things that we just didn't find in the market.
Yeah. So you and I met at the Texas Restaurant Association show last month, believe it or not. It's already been a month. Yeah. Was it last month or was it July? Anyway, it was a great show. And I think what struck me is it when you started telling me about what Ovation was, I started going back into my brain of all the conversations I have with existing restaurant owners or leaders of brands. And there's always this common thing that our service is great. Why aren't we getting people back? And the first thing in my
Mhm.
head is because your service and your food probably aren't as great as you think it is or that you're selling me on. But how would you know? You go to Yelp reviews, and we all know that you can, and you should mitigate those reviews. You should talk to people. You should try to get answers. But when you start to directly interact with someone, their tone changes. And when you because it's confrontational and people get uncomfortable being honest when they're talking with you. So there's brilliance, I think, in the internet world and the social media world that we live in because as Mike Tyson said, people have gone far too long saying whatever they want without getting punched in the face. But there's something about that, right? Where it's like, I can be raw with my experience without fear of repercussion. Now, there's arguments as to whether or not that has made things worse or better. But when you then take that and say, hey, you reviewed us 1 star and ripped us apart, tell me more. Well, now the heat gets turned down and you're not really maybe getting the information that you want. Now, couple that with the fact that people are hesitant even more now than ever to actually say something when they're inside the restaurant. And I think the problem compounds. And so to date, outside of Ovation, the question remains, why aren't people coming back? Why are we not seeing repeat traffic or increased sales? And we haven't known. So what have we used before this? Secret shoppers,
Uh-huh.
to try to figure out what's going wrong.
Right,
Um,
where it's like, hopefully in that 20 minutes, a month that you're seeing the guest experience, they're capturing the right things, right? And sure, you can get 100 questions, and I get the purpose of secret shoppers, right?
of
I
course.
get I get that when I'm in Sheboygan and I own a nationwide 500 location chain, I want to know, are people wearing uniforms? Is that stuff happening? And you don't want to bother your customers with 200 questions, but the
Hmm.
problem is you can spot secret shoppers, right?
Right.
You know what they're looking for. And the other thing is that you can turn your guests into secret shoppers, you know?
Right.
Uh, and so with but you don't want to do it in the moment, right? In the moment is when the emotions are there, right? In the moment, I don't want to tell you what you want to hear. In the moment, I want to tell you what I'm thinking as the
Hmm.
guest. And if I've got a problem with my fries were missing, I don't really care, was the guy behind the counter wearing the uniform correctly, right?
Right.
I don't care, was I greeted with a hello when I walked in. I just want my freaking fries,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that's really the whole premise of what we're working on. I mean, to your point of people don't like being confrontational. So, two things. One is with online reviews, when you have a negative online review, you have like a 0.3% chance of winning that customer back, getting them to change their review. It's very, very
Mm.
hard to do. Um,
Hmm.
Now, if you catch it before that, then they're likely to never even post that review in the first place. And then the other part is with the table touch. You go up to a table and you say, how was everything? And you say, and if everything was great, you say it was great. If everything was terrible, you say it was great.
Hmm.
And that's
Hmm.
the thing about a table touch. People don't want to be honest. They don't want to be confrontational. And so, I mean, just for example, Joseph. So I am at I'm at a celebrity chef's restaurant.
Hmm.
I'm there for brunch. I'm there with the president of a group that has almost 2,500 restaurants. He
Well.
and I are talking, and I'm saying, I bet you this restaurant has some kind of a receipt survey. But the problem is, I'm not going to bother taking that receipt survey to tell him that this croissant isn't very good. And the guy goes, I know, it's really dry, isn't it? And I was like, yeah. He goes, I had that last week and I thought it was terrible. I kid you not, 30 seconds later, a server comes up and says, how was everything? And
It's
what do we
great.
say? And
It
what
was
do we
great.
say? We say, it was great. We, he walks away. I turn to him and I'm like, this is why we need Ovation. I was like, if any two
Yeah.
people in the world should have told him that there was something wrong with the croissants, it's the guy that's president of 2,500 restaurants and the guy that owns a restaurant guest feedback company, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
But even we felt uncomfortable, and it wasn't worth the effort to tell the server, because where would it go? It would make the
Right.
server feel bad. They probably wouldn't pass it on. It certainly wouldn't get up. They're not going to change their croissant provider. Like, it's just one of those things that it didn't feel worth the effort. But for every one complaint you hear, there are 26 people who had that same complaint that didn't share it. And so the concept is, make it really easy for more people to share it, and you'll see the trends. Whereas you don't need to do the deep dive of 200 questions. And then guess what we do at Ovation is the next day you could send them a survey. Hey, answer 5 additional questions to get $5 off your next order, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you can dive in a little bit more because it's a lot more respectful to the guest to just say, everything good? Great. Next day, let's dive deeper.
Right. Yeah, let's see how things played out. So I love that because one, you and your guest were total liars, but that's fine. And I'm willing. I know you said 26 others have been silent. Is that real data, or is that like okay? So like that's interesting because I would have bet more. I would bet like 100 people didn't say something, because a croissant is pretty. I love croissants, so like a really good one is pretty magical. But is it enough to push me into the complaint department? If I had a system, maybe, yeah. But that reminds me on a lower scale. So I was in New Orleans months ago, and I saw this restaurant. It looked really cool. It looked a bit chic, and so we were pretty excited to try it out. And so we went there, and first off, the waiter, it was a higher end restaurant. It wasn't like super swanky, but it was definitely above casual. And the waiter was so overly familiar with me. Maybe it's because I had my sleeves rolled up and he saw tattoos. But it's like, I'm paying a lot of money. And I don't want to be Mr. Zalud into oblivion. Like, I don't want to be treated like royalty or anything. But a little bit of, like, formality would have been nice. Uh-huh. So I was like, okay, kind of uncomfortable. I mean, it was really buddy. Like, the only way it could have been more buddy is if he dropped the F-bomb. Let's put it that way. And
was he one of the ones that he like kneel down or like sit down next to your table? Like,
God, did he?
Things like that are like, I don't know. I'm not about that. Maybe
it was just super familiar. Like, hey man, what's up, man? And I'm like, it'd be greater if you were like more formal. But so we go through this. I ordered some soup. The soup came out, and it was a salt bomb. It was just so salty, barely edible. And so I'm like, okay, well, whatever. You win some, you lose some. Got the entree, which was a disconcerted mess. Like, the things on the plate were probably good, but they just made no sense together. And I'm not a persnickety eater, man. Like, I'm just not. But this thing, it was a lot of food. It was food dumped on top of other food, and not an ounce of salt to the whole thing. So I'm like, did you just use it all?
Just sprinkle it on. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm eating this, and I'm looking at my wife, and I'm like, I think I have to ask for salt, because like, it's really bland. And I work up. I mean, it was definitely like I had to man talk myself into, because I'm just not a complainer. I'm super understanding of what happens in a restaurant. So it takes a lot for me to be unhappy or discontent with a meal. And so I had to flag the waiter down. I'm like, do you have some salt? And he brings over basically a standard issue salt shaker. And I'm like, yeah. I guess that's what I asked for. I just kind of thought maybe it'd be better salt than like iodized Morton's table salt. But needless to say, bad experience. But did I complain? Nope.
No.
Didn't give a bad review. Didn't communicate with managers. So I just left.
But are you so excited to go back?
I never went back. We were down there for months, and it was even brought up because it was open when other places weren't. And I was like, no, I have no desire to go back there. And it was pretty bad. So just, for folks who are listening and watching, just imagine how many times that happens and you just don't know. And I think that's, I mean, it's a tragedy. And the table touch, sorry, Danny Meyer, it just doesn't, it just, we're not in that world anymore. And the only thing you can hope to do, not to bash Danny Meyer, is try to make sure that that last interaction with a guest is the most memorable part of the experience. Make it something magical, because that's really all you get. However, with Ovation, in this system, what's really impressive is you do have a table touch that is more effective, more open, and more what's the word I'm thinking of? Like magnetic, maybe. Like it urges you to interact and be honest, and maybe not in a bad way. And because the other side of this too is, gosh, how hard is it to get a 5-star review? Like a positive review in general, maybe not just 5 stars, but like, hey, it seems like you really enjoyed yourself. Could you please take the time out of your day and say so on Yelp? Like, everyone knows that it just doesn't happen often, right?
Exactly.
So how does Ovation help build the positive reviews on these channels?
So look, 80 to 90%, depending on the brand, of our customers are going to have a 5-star experience. Meaning that they're going to have an experience that is, everything met their expectations. What happens with those customers? Here's why you're going to get a lot more negative reviews than positive ones as far as a ratio. Mm-hmm. Data shows that you're going to get that someone is 3 times more likely to leave a negative review than a positive one. And it's not because we're just horrible creatures and that love to just get mad at people, but it's because when things go great, that's why I went there. I went there to have a great experience, right? If I thought I was going to have a 3-star experience, then I would have gone to a 3-star place, right? But right. I wanted to go to some place where I'm like, hey, I'm even at McDonald's, right? I went there and I got their quarter pounder with cheese. I had sworn off McDonald's. I lived in Ukraine for 2 years, and the only burgers I ate were at McDonald's. And so after that, I got home and I was like, I just can't do it anymore. So I went 15 years with no McDonald's. And then one of my coworkers was like, no, man, like the quarter pounder with cheese is actually pretty good. And I'm like, I mean, all right, if you buy one for me, I'll go. And it was great, right?
Yeah.
Now, why didn't I leave McDonald's a 5-star review? Because I got my burger, I got back to the office, and we ate our burger. I was really surprised. It was good. And what did I do? I went back to work. I got stuff I got to do. I don't have the time to do all this. So with Ovation, one of the things that we do is we have an incentive. We say, how did we do 2 questions for your chance to win a $100 gift card? And if we have an integration, that'll come through a text message. So you literally just click on a link. If we don't have an integration, it's a QR code that they scan. Either way, it's very, very easy to do. And if they loved it, 5 out of 5, then we say, awesome. Could you leave us a review? It really helps. And when they click to leave a review, it doesn't just take them to that review page. We opened it right up so they can leave that 5 stars. They don't need to do anything else. And literally in 3 clicks, I want to leave a review, click 5 stars, click post. Now, obviously, we want them to write something. But worst case scenario, they'll leave you that 5-star review. And guess what? That's going to help you in Google. Our average customer at Ovation gets 226% more 5-star reviews using us. And that's something that we're really proud of because it's so essential that these 5-star reviews help you to, it's so essential because you need to rank higher in Google, and 5-star reviews, the velocity of 5-star reviews is the number 1 factor that's going to do that. And then number 2, if you don't have at least a 4 stars on Google, you are missing out. You're missing out because you're losing customer trust. They're less likely to go to you when you have a 3.9 or below. But if you don't have a 4.0 stars, and I'm looking for burgers, and I type in best burger near me, guess what happens? Google will take all of the ratings, all the restaurants that have below 4 stars, and remove them from the search results. So it is so important that 1, you have at least a 4.0 on Google. And if you do have a 4.0, don't rest on your laurels because it's all about velocity. I have one of my customers, their new restaurant, they'd been around for, they'd been around for like a year. It was a Brazilian restaurant. In the same area, there was another restaurant that had been around for decades, and they had, like 1,000 reviews, and this new restaurant had like 50 reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they started working with Ovation, and we started getting them tons of reviews, even though they were a quarter of the footprint of the other location, even though they didn't have nearly as many butts and seats or orders. They ranked above them in Google because they were getting a higher velocity of 5-star reviews. So
Right.
it's not just about getting a good rating, it's about keeping those reviews coming in. And if you don't want to use Ovation, sure, like I get that there are people who, it's Ovation's cost of a cup of coffee a day, but there are people who don't want to spend that, and that's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so just put up a sign saying, hey, leave us a review. That'll get you a small bump, but it's more than nothing. And online reviews are really critical to every single location.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so it's funny because I think that's the name of the game for when you're first starting as well, is you got to get traction. You got to be findable.
Yes.
You have to make sure when someone types in best pho in the city, you're coming up. And that is such a hard game to play. Search engine optimization, there's a reason why it's a full-time job. And rare is the case that restaurants can actually afford it because it involves so many things like content writing, backlinking, the list goes on. And so to have a system like this that actually garners really good reviews is so vital in so many ways. But I see some correlations. So I'm going to kind of jump around here. You are obviously very excited about Ovation. It's a great energy to see, and obviously it's your company, so you should be. But I think the excitement started before Ovation, and I want to unpack that a little bit. So you had a blog, you wrote a book called Dating Never Works Until It Does, and that was all about relationships. And I definitely see some linkage there because this is all about relationships, the relationship between a restaurant and the restaurant's team and the people that you're there to serve. Tell me, how did your thinking from that blog and the book lead into Ovation? And maybe start by telling me more about the book.
Yeah, so I went on over 1,000 dates before I got married, and my wife wrote the preface to the book as kind of like, hey, trust him.
Yeah,
I did.
The first line was, "I win."
or I lost. I don't know. So the concept was I went on 1,000 dates and I learned a lot of lessons along the way on how to build relationships, how to build genuine relationships, how to make things, because for me, I went on a lot of first dates, didn't go on a ton of second dates, but I became friends with so many people I went on first dates with because, hey, look, maybe it wasn't there romantically, but we created a great relationship. And so I loved that. I loved being able to learn and from people. There's a great poem, Desert Dorada by Max Ehrman. And a lot of people will be like, oh, I can't go on dates because like some people are just too boring, right? Like I don't like going on dates. And it's like in this poem, Desert Dorada, he says, listen to the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. And everyone has an opportunity to share something and to give something. And I believe so much that that we all have something to learn from everyone that we meet. And so anyway, it was just it was a wonderful experience, this whole dating thing, albeit like quite lonely. Like when I was like, 4 months of no third dates, I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on?
Probably start sending you down like a self reflection, navel gazing, right? Like you're like, what am I doing wrong?
And so honestly, one of the things that I would do is I was like, look, I wanted to get better. I wanted to improve. And so if there was someone that I was interested in and they weren't interested in me, I literally would ask them, hey, I get that you're not interested in me, right? Once I kind of got the hints, I was like, can I talk to you and just like learn a little bit? And they'd be like, yeah. And I would ask them, what happened? Like, did I do something? Is there anything I could do to get better? And I'm asking you this not because I know that you're a really nice person. You don't like to do this. It's like, but this is going to help me be a better person if I can get your feedback. And it was really insightful, the feedback that I got. And one of the things that I've seen in the restaurant industry is a lot of people who they go on a lot of first dates and they don't get to that second date. They don't get to that third date. These customers aren't coming back in, and yet they don't want to ask why. They're afraid to ask why. Look, I get it. I just did an Ovation employee survey and I asked them, "Hey, what do we need to do to improve?" And I'll admit it, when the feedback started coming, I got pretty nervous. I was like, "Oh
Yeah.
man, I wonder how this is going to be." But at the end of the day, if we don't get that feedback, we can't improve. So it's so important that we're able to be open to the fact that we're not perfect.
Right.
Get feedback, and treat first dates like a first date. Going to Danny Meyer, one thing that he said that I love is when he says hospitality is a dialogue, right? And how do you have this dialogue nowadays? Well, it happens digitally, right? But the concept is you still need to have that dialogue. And so with this book, it really helped me kind of formulate if I were to summarize everything down into 100 lessons from these 1,000 dates, what would it be? And that's what this book is. And it goes through the whole arc of from you meeting someone all the way through to stories about my great aunt and her husband and their relationship on his deathbed. And so that's the kind of relationship that we want to build with our customers. But it's tough. It's tough, right, Joseph, when you've got a staff of 20, 3 of them are good. In a specific location, and like 3 of them, by good I mean they care, right? The others may not care. So what do you do? How do you get these people to care more? One thing that we found is that by empowering your managers to actually handle these situations, to give them the Ovation app on their phone and to say, look, these customers are coming in. I understand that you're working really hard. You can't get to everyone. Things are going to fall through the cracks. But guess what? That's okay. Because of the 100 orders that you did on your shift, 90 of them were great. 10 of them had some issues. Let's figure out what's happening. How do we prevent those issues? But let's celebrate the fact that you're doing a great job with this. And when you're able to empower your staff, Ovation becomes like the superpower.
Right.
Actually, one quick story. You mind?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
So one of our customers had this issue. And here's the other interesting thing about feedback is for your loyal customers. Say you aren't doing receipt surveys, right? You have a customer that comes in once every other month. All right. They come in one time and something goes terribly wrong. Who do they tell? Where do they share that information? And so one of our customers, another it's a fast casual place and they do pitas and stuff like that. And so someone came in and it was a regular, and the CEO got a text message and it said from this person through the Ovation app, and it was like, hey, normally everything is great, but I just don't appreciate how you've made your portion sizes smaller. I come in all the time and it's bugging me. So he was like, portion size is smaller. He's like, we haven't changed anything with the portion size. He called the manager at that location. The manager was like, oh, well, as it turns out, there's someone new on the line and they grabbed the wrong size spoon to serve up the chicken for the pita. And so they were actually using a smaller portion of chicken that day. And so he was able to fix the issue. Then he used Ovation to text the customer, apologize, sent her $10, and she was blown away. The fact that not only somebody responded, but that it was a very understandable issue. He resolved it, and she goes, if I was loyal before, you've got me for life. And that's what it comes down to, is caring enough to listen and to engage, to have that dialogue. and then to find these issues and that you can fix them.
Right. That's a huge thing. I think people aren't given, man, I hate to say this, a safe space, a comfortable space to have that dialogue. Just like you did with the dating thing. It's, hey, I'm not trying. I have no ulterior motives. This is strictly for me. We do the same thing at Vigor too. When we've lost a pitch, or we finish a project, we're like, hey, let's have a real conversation. We're not going to hard sell you. We're not going to challenge you. We want to unpack why we didn't win. If it's a successful project, we want to unpack where did we excel? Where were you elated? Because I think that's the other thing. Why don't we get 5-star reviews? Well, because we've met their needs, we've met their expectations. And out of the thousands of interactions, what percentage are interactions are elation level? And of that percentage, what percentage of those people would actually take the time to go post about it? I think that's why we see so few reviews that are 5-star. On the other hand, out of all those interactions, how many are subpar and then below, subpar to wretched? And what percentage of those are people going to post about? Because you get action from people when there is passion, positive or negative passion. And unfortunately, it's really easy to trigger negative passion in this industry. So that's why we see so many negative reviews. But Ovation is obviously a great source to fix that. So a couple more questions before we land the plane here. What's on the horizon for Ovation? What's coming next as a company? Features.
So one thing that we just launched this morning, in fact,
This is September 2nd, by the way, just so people know.
September 2nd, yeah.
Yep.
Is custom questions, right? So like I was talking about, that ability to dive in a little bit deeper. There are people who are willing to take those longer surveys, right? You give them $5 off your next order and they'll take a longer survey. But the key is, how do you do that in a respectful way? How do you do that in a way that isn't going to intercept the 5-star reviews, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I just got done taking 10 questions because I want $5 off because I love you, I'm not then going to go on and leave you a 5-star review. Like, I just answered all your questions, buddy. Like, calm down. I'm,
right.
Don't go in for a kiss on the doorstep when you're picking me up. And so when it comes down to it, it's like, but let's say that you take the Ovation survey, 2 questions for your chance to win a $100 gift card. Super simple. And by the way, to your point of like the extremes, one thing that Ovation does is we pick up the people in the middle, the people that wouldn't have necessarily left a 1-star review because the croissant wasn't great. But hey, I sure, I'll let you know. If 2 questions, really simple. It's an easy avenue, non-confrontational. So we get a lot of the middle of the roaders. Which that gets some incredible data. Everything was perfect except everything was great, but like that data is critical to move you from people that like you to people that love you.
Right.
But the concept is, how do we then move to that next level, right? How do we then get people coming back in and actually driving value? And that's what we're focused on. And with the longer surveys, what you're going to be able to do is the next day you could send them a notice saying $5 off to answer these 5 questions, and you could learn about what's your favorite dish here. You could say, how did you hear about us? So you can track do a better job of tracking your ad spends. Would you like to be notified about new dishes? So now you've got a unique group that becomes your customer, your essential customer group that you can go and pitch new things to. So there's a lot of additional questions that you may want to ask that you can ask the next day. And so anyway, that just launched. And then we're also launching some really unique comps. So that way you can see how are things doing based on other restaurants in your area that are similar to you. And so if you have a bad day, but you're realizing everyone had a bad day, it could just have been, hey, it's Chicago in the wintertime, right? Like,
right.
Nobody's happy.
Right.
So anyway, those are some of the things that we've got coming out in the near future. And then long term, it's really about how do we continually aggregate and improve the guest experience. Really, any touch point that we have, We are testing out things right now of live chat on websites and things like that to really help engage and continue that dialogue of the guest and the restaurant.
That's awesome. Final question, and quite possibly the most important of the entire episode. Final meal and drink. What are you going to have?
Okay. So final meal. This is going to sound like a cop-out. Okay, but it's not.
It better not be the quarter pounder. I will lose it.
No, and just to be clear, the quarter pounder, it just was a lot better than I remembered McDonald's being.
Yeah.
So I think my final meal, honestly, would probably be Bacchanal. Bacchanal is a buffet in Vegas. It's just got a little bit of everything, and I love variety. I'm the type of person, Joseph, where if we were eating out, I'd be like, "Hey, do you want to share a meal?" And if you said yes, we'd share a meal. And if you said no, I'd still pick some food off your plate with your permission. So I get food ADD, and so I can't finish one thing. Anyway, that would be my final meal. And then with drink, I don't drink alcohol, but my final, I absolutely love Dr. Pepper 10 mixed with Coke Zero, 50-50 with Pebble Ice in a styrofoam cup.
Wow.
That is my jam.
I love that. Yeah. So you're like Coke freestyle. You're the core consumer for that product. Where you can make your own thing
when
up.
It has like the little splash at the very end after you finish it. You have to go, and then you pull the cup away. Right. You don't get the last little splash of just soda.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, hey, this has been awesome. I'm really impressed with Ovation. I think the listeners will be as well. This definitely more than solves, I think, a huge issue that the restaurant is facing, and can lead to solving some other issues as well, operationally speaking, and even from a marketing standpoint. So I appreciate the insights. I appreciate the software, and looking forward to seeing what's next with you and Ovation.
All right. Well, you can keep track of us at ovationup.com.
Awesome. And we'll have all the links to all the social media and the website, of course, on the website when this launches. And do check them out. I think it's well worth your time. Thanks, Zack.
Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate it, Joseph.
Absolutely.
If you love what we've served up, please follow us at Vigor Branding on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Medium. Forktales is produced by the team at Vigor. Audio and video post-productions provided by Zencaster. Music performed by Jet Trash and licensed through musicbed.com. Joseph handles his own hair, makeup, and stunts. Copyright 2003 to 2021, Vigor Graphic Design, LLC, all rights reserved.